Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving. Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 60, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin, the big 6-0.
Yeah.
Wow, we've been debunking some junk for a while now.
Yes, we have.
60 whole episodes full of BS.
Yes.
Not us, hopefully.
Well, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
But that's
right?
okay. We're used to it.
Yeah, we are used to it. And welcome to all of you listening. Thanks so much for doing so. If you're listening as a podcast, thank you so much for subscribing and for leaving us a review. Really appreciate it. If you're listening live, good morning. Hope you have a good cup of coffee.
A strong cup of coffee.
Strong cup of coffee. And of course, you can find out more about Tawny and myself. You can actually see video versions of this at our YouTube channel, Breaking Up with RBS. We also have a Facebook page of the same name. You can jump over there, get more interaction with us between episodes, some other content, find out more about Tawny's 6-week self-mastery course.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's going good. We're all over the place.
There are a lot of people mastering themselves.
Well, hopefully, hopefully, even if it's just for a moment, right? Because it's about moment to moment to moment. So, right, we're always learning, growing,
Yes,
and mastering
right.
in presence, right?
Well, and that's what's so great about that course is that everybody gets to take all the things that we're talking about, apply them in their own context.
Yep.
See how this stuff works. Because really, in the end, we can talk about it all we want, right? It's not the same as experiencing it.
No, we cannot talk about it in a way that somebody would get an experience from an embodied place.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the difference between talking about swimming in the ocean and swimming in the ocean.
Exactly. It's different.
It is different.
Mm-hmm.
It is different anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, I don't know. My certification course is winding up.
Yeah. How's that?
Or winding down. Which one's the right? Winding down.
Winding down. I don't know. I guess you get to choose.
It's winding down, meaning it's completing.
Yeah.
I'm finishing it. And, we've been on this run lately, all these different things we've been looking at. We spent a month talking about happiness, and right now we're talking about success, these big terms, words that I know you like to take apart.
I do. I love it.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I noticed is there's a lot of really interesting information out there about with happiness, or the official name of it in the scientific world is subjective well-being.
Yes.
There's that, and there's all the different schools of thought on that, and different schools of thought on what success is and all that kind of stuff. And I've enjoyed learning about it. I've enjoyed reading about it, listening to TED Talks and all this kind of stuff. It's all really good. One of the things though that struck me about it is that it's interesting how much of with you and I talking about getting into the body and the centrality of getting into the body, how much stuff that's being given to me in the certification that's really heady. It's all in the brain, and not in the body. And I recognize that part of my job as a coach is to embody more myself and that kind of thing. But it just kind of struck me that there's a lot that can learn out there, but all that head knowledge by itself, I just have this feeling in my gut, really only goes so far by itself.
Well, we have so much information out there.
Mhm.
I kind of think about it as knowledge or information or concepts or theory or whatever word. We have a lot of words.
We do.
I think we have too many words, but whatever. You're a writer probably, so you disagree with me.
Not enough words.
There can be always more words, but anyways, that's another show. So lots of words, lots of those that come into our head and we have to think about.
Yeah.
As opposed to experience.
Yeah.
So we're going to get fed information about different sorts of studies and concepts and those kinds of things. But ultimately, to really know something, we also have to experience from an embodied space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that what I noted about it was really what that whole approach does. If it's all just about information, it's championing the analytical over anything else, over the experiential, perhaps in this case. I'm used to that on one hand. My old academic training was all analytical. And of course, when you read an opinion piece about some issue, it's analytical. It's making an argument, right? It's trying to take a certain position. Uh, you know, any debate you listen to is going to have that, right? Sports talk radio is going to be about that. Maybe that's not quite as analytical, but nevertheless, it just everything's in the head, right? And for what we're talking about, that's part of the problem, right? Is because stories caught up in the analytical space, that's bad news. Whether they're good stories or bad stories, right? Or about good
Mhm.
things or bad things.
Mhm. Well, it just keeps us in that thinking space only
Mhm,
for most of the time,
mhm,
right? When we're connected with our body and then thinking, we're also experiencing from an embodied space and then having some thoughts about that,
mhm.
right? But if we're not connected to body, I think we don't learn to be connected to our body in that way.
Yeah,
We learn to think about things more, get more information, think about it some more, and then get more information and think about it some more.
that's right.
And that's what creates, good grades,
Mhm,
achievements,
mhm.
research,
Recognition.
all the things
Mhm.
that we're typically trying to get.
Yeah, and yet, for me, for years before I ever went anywhere close to this type of work, uh, I remember being so frustrated that I seemingly could talk a lot about what I thought about my feelings
Mhm.
and myself, but couldn't connect with my feelings or myself. Didn't have what we would call an experience of myself that was really grounding in the reality of who I am and where I am and how I see things. I remember being so frustrated by that. I only have the language for it now,
Mhm.
you know, but that doesn't, it's, and I think that's why I was having these reactions to the work that I was doing. It's like, this
Mhm.
feels really familiar
Mhm.
and lacking. And not that they were putting it forward to be lacking.
Yes.
It was just, it's the kind of the information that's important to have to start with, to talk about, to consider, to coach around.
Mhm.
But it felt very limited
Mhm.
in that sense.
Well, and if it's for a purpose, if you've got to learn a concept, we might not want to be overwhelmed with or searching for or connecting to or, you know, having an awareness of what's going on in our body necessarily in that moment. We might want to learn that concept. So our thinking space does do us
Mhm,
some good,
mhm,
right?
absolutely.
And then we can kind of build that bridge and take that concept into our body when the experience takes place,
I like
right?
that, building the bridge.
Yeah. So
Like
and
that.
I think I was thinking about when you were talking about before, sort of like not being in connection with your body and emotions. Like we've been taught, we've talked about this. We've been taught to move away from pain and discomfort. What at all costs, right?
Mhm,
We numb ourselves from it with all sorts of distractions or substances or escapist kinds of entertainment type things. We numb ourselves from that pain and discomfort all the time.
mhm,
We've been taught to kind of think our way through it, as we've talked about before.
mhm.
We know that doesn't work,
Nope.
right? And then or also to make a problem out of it.
Right.
So sometimes when we really do let ourselves feel it, we're making a huge problem out of that feeling
Mhm,
as opposed to just letting ourselves connect with it
mhm,
from a place of trust that the body can handle it.
mhm.
We're thinking about all of the problems that this is causing or how we're supposed to get away from this.
Right. Right now I'm thinking of all the people I know who hate to cry,
Yeah.
just as one clear example of that,
Mhm. Mhm.
and will say so.
Mhm.
"I hate crying.
Mhm.
I hate crying." Or you see them starting, it's like for a good reason perhaps, and they don't wanna do it.
Yeah.
And the fear of what, you can tell there's fear. I mean, they maybe don't even articulate it,
Mhm.
but it's there,
Mhm.
right? And the idea to run away from it as quickly as possible. I can't tell you how many times I've been with people who said, "Man, I really hate to cry," and the next thing they do is they pick up something to help them cope.
Mhm.
A s a drink of their drink at dinner,
Mhm.
right? Or turning to dinner to getting busy with something.
Sure.
going
Sure.
to another room and doing something else,
Changing the subject.
changing the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than sitting with that. Because, getting into the body, what I've always appreciated about it with that is allowing those emotions to flow in my body. They expand, you kinda let them run, and relatively quickly, it becomes clear to me, at least, that I'm not about to be overwhelmed by them. They're not about to cause me any problems. They're not about to threaten me in any way.
Mhm.
And then suddenly it's easier to sit with.
And if we're not chasing it with a thought, right? This is what we do. We have a feeling, or we have a thought first, and the feeling comes, and we chase it with another thought, right? And so then we don't want it to flow because
Mm,
we've we've actually grown it ourselves with our thought, and then another thought, and then another. So it does feel overwhelming, but we've
mm,
thought our way into an overwhelming state, as opposed to it letting it be what it is in
mhm,
whatever capacity it came in with.
mhm. Yeah. Wow, there's so many examples I'm thinking of.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, either we have a thought about something that brought us discomfort last week, driving in our car, all of a sudden the thought comes up, oh my gosh, I have a feeling about that. Maybe we were, hopeful and excited about an outcome, and that outcome didn't occur in the way that we had hoped. And so that was last week. And then this is now I'm driving in the car, and then all of a sudden I think about that, and I have a whoosh of emotion about that. And then I think, how unfair that was, and then I get angry, and then I think, this
Mhm.
always happens, and then I get mad, and then I think another thought, and then I've added another element to my body
Uh-huh.
around some kind of emotion. And then we think, "Feel this? What? I don't wanna feel this. How do I get
Mhm.
away from all this?
Right.
I don't have time for this." You were fine
Just a minute ago,
just a minute ago.
and 4 stoplights ago that you don't remember what color they were.
Right, you were fine. You were fine,
Right.
and that memory came in, and then you chased it with more thoughts.
Yeah. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, this idea that every thought that comes into our mind, we feel we have to indulge
Mhm.
because it came there for a reason. Well, maybe not. Just
It
pop
may not have come in to overwhelm us,
right. Might
but
have just
that's
popped up. Right.
right, it just might have popped up because our
Yeah.
brain likes to think,
Right.
and then a memory pops up, and then we're on the train.
And that's the danger of making something a problem even when it does happen, because if you do that, every memory you're gonna have of it is gonna kick up that same, or the threat will be you'll call it a problem again,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, and then we're excited at least that we can identify problems. We're definitely very aware because we're identifying all the problems around us.
'Cause that fixes everything, as we all know. We're all really good at pointing out actually, aren't we much better at pointing out everybody else's problems than we are at our own?
But I think it's both and.
Okay.
I think yes. I definitely think we have a very clear understanding of what everybody else's problems are. All of us. Very clear. We feel very, very clear about that,
People
right?
just did things the way I did,
Yep.
everything would be fine.
Again, we may not really have clarity there, but anyways, we believe we do.
Mhm.
And then we do believe we've got some problems too.
That's
We
true.
they might not be the ones that are worth paying attention to, or they might not even be problems at all. But we definitely share our problems in our head to ourselves, or to other people.
Man.
Um, and yeah, I'm
And then other people sometimes will help us either make it a problem or try and do their best to help us get out of it as quickly as possible.
right
You
because
know, we
it's
think we're doing the right thing. We're sharing our feelings with somebody, and then there's, don't worry about it, or oh, you'll be fine, or maybe indulging in it when you don't need to.
all of it,
Yeah,
all of it. It's not to say that we're not wanting to share ourselves with other people,
of
right? I
course.
mean, we if it's from a place of awareness, that sharing and connecting is super healthy. We want that. We want this, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, though, it's we're ruminating, or we're making it bigger than
Mhm.
it really is, or we've got some blame there, and some guilt there, and some criticism over here, and some contempt and over here and some resentment over here, and we're adding all of this to the bucket, and we can't even really clearly define the problem we're
Mhm.
wrapped up in,
Mhm.
if that's even a problem.
Mhm.
Or it can be really stimulating to have a problem,
Yeah.
and then we all get to pretend like we're solving it. Whether we're like, "Oh, no, it's no big deal,"
Yeah.
or whether we're like, "Holy smokes, I have the answer for you,"
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's a lot of energy around something that might be helpful, but oftentimes isn't.
Right, and from a place of real connection, there doesn't need to be that kind of energy, does there? I mean, because if you're holding space for someone, a point of connection, at least for me, if I'm in a connected conversation with somebody who's sharing something difficult, I'm not gonna try and talk them out of it
Mhm.
or necessarily even talk them through it. It might just be to hold the space, you know, maybe saying things I can relate or that must be that sounds tough.
Mhm.
Validating that clearly it's tough for them
Yeah.
because that's a different type of energy, it seems like.
Yeah, I think when I'm thinking about sort of just, how we typically as friends or family members or, close um in close relationships, how we typically sort of just vent about
Mm,
things or complain about things with each other or
mhm.
identify problems in that person over there with each other. It's like
Those
this.
offhand things, yeah.
Those things that tend to make up a lot of our conversation. We
Mhm.
think about gossip, like, a lot of our conversations are about things that probably aren't really problems, that we've
Mhm.
identified as problems.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Or somebody else's really interesting problems.
um, or we have a problem with somebody else who's very
It's
interesting.
very interesting.
Because because we keep talking about them
Yes,
and their problems,
everywhere.
right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So that's part of the thing, and certainly, as coaches, there's that training around being able to hold that container like you're talking about,
sure.
holding that space for people to share whatever it is that they wanna share without jumping in to the bucket of problems with them, right? Like, "And another thing."
Another thing, you haven't mentioned this yet. You know? Yeah, let's just toss this grenade into the yeah, yeah, we're not supposed to
Mhm.
do
Mhm. Yeah, I was talking with one of my clients the other day, and she was just a decade or more of just a lot of negative conversation around and with the family dynamic.
Mm,
Like when she talks with her extended family members, there's just always conversation about, well, that family member. And why doesn't that family member do it right the way that we do it? And then and so she's finding herself like, oh, that energy around always having to talk about problems and how
mhm,
this person did it wrong or that person did it wrong or nobody likes her anymore or whatever the stuff is, right? Just became super taxing and she just decided and got clear that that wasn't the kind of conversation that she wanted to have anymore, but then that limited her time with these family members because that's kind of the way the family sorta does things.
yeah,
It's the dance.
the dance.
Mhm.
Dance that can be really hard to even question the music or the moves or whatever.
Well, you can only do it for yourself,
Right.
right? One day, she was all in it for a long time, like,
Mhm,
she didn't even know this was the dance we were doing
mhm,
until she decided to look really clearly and become more aware and thought, "Oh, yeah, I've been
mhm.
doing this dance, but you know what? I never felt good when I got home after this one."
Yeah, right. It's amazing how that can happen. I had a client not too long ago who, at the very beginning of the session, kinda laying out what he wanted to talk about, didn't stop talking for about 5 minutes as he laid out story after story of a similar dynamic. It was family related, but all these hypothetical things that this person was thinking or that must mean this person is doing because they always do that, and historically they do that, and all of a sudden, uh, there were about 6 different hypothetical conversations or situations going on when this person I asked them about pretty much what was happening in the present. That was what was happening.
Mhm.
And I asked the question, how much of that do you know for certain? And there was a long pause and, oh my God, none of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
and I didn't say anything after that, just let that sit. And that them being able to see that went all of a sudden went, oh wow,
Mhm.
was a lot of energy expended over absolutely nothing,
Mhm. Mhm.
at least in this moment,
Right.
right? Maybe they're guessing right, maybe they aren't, but you don't know. And at the expense of the moment and at the expense of, in this case, his own health. I mean, his energy he was so stressed out, so anxious,
Mhm.
so frustrated, so fearful,
Mhm.
you know, he started asking himself the question, was it really worth it?
Yeah.
There wasn't much I had to say.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And going back, like, we've been taught to do all of that anticipating
Oh, I
and
know.
ask ourselves, "Okay, what if? What if this happens, then this? Okay, so they always do this thing, so that means they're doing this thing again, and so then they're gonna say this, and so I gotta be prepared for what I'm gonna say next after they say this." Like,
Mhm.
we've been taught that that is the way to protect ourselves from something going awry,
Yeah.
right? And so he's not doing anything other than probably what he's
No,
been taught
no.
and is done forever, and then just one question will have him, sort of rethinking this thing.
Yeah. Oh, I empathize with him a lot. I've done that
Mhm,
mental gymnastics routine, oh, countless times
mhm,
in the past,
yeah,
and it's exhausting,
mhm,
and where we've been working is has been more of exploring where the areas where more energy could be spent in a positive direction.
mhm,
He feels overwhelmed with these types of hypothetical scenarios, and it's at the expense of what he has going on in his life, which is all really good stuff.
mhm.
Successful career, you know, real good prospects in lots of areas of his life, and he can't hold on to them very well.
Mhm. Well, when we go back and think about energy management,
Mm,
if he's spending so much of his energy in what's not real,
mhm.
then he's not gonna have the energy to give to what's real.
Right. Yeah, and it's costing him real things,
Mhm.
real
Yeah.
hours of sleep,
Mhm.
real time and effort to make healthy food for himself,
Mhm.
to take care of himself physically, take care of his requirements at his job. Those are real costs.
Mhm.
We talk a lot on here about, you spend all that extra energy. Well, that energy has real tangible results wherever it's getting spent or not spent. And what we're talking about on here every week is about how can we have our energy in the best places for us to build better lives for ourselves that fit with our values and feel better and not so stressed about things. Because almost without exception, and I don't know if this happens to you with your clients, you've been doing this a lot longer than me. Almost without exception, everybody says that's what they want on some level.
Well, yeah, people wanna feel better.
Feel better, less stress,
Yeah.
more connected,
Mhm.
more doing what I want to do.
They wanna have more energy. They
Yeah,
wanna be able to move with a greater ease
yeah,
generally,
yeah.
right? Wanna be able to think or process or experience life
Hmm.
more clearly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They want to get their own BS out of the way. They just don't know how to necessarily spot the BS
Well,
as
because
well.
none of us learned how to do
That's
this,
right.
right? So now we're learning that we have so much of it,
Exactly.
and we need to finally pick the poop up.
Put it in the baggie.
Put the poop in the baggie.
Toss it off the
Yeah,
bridge.
that's what we need to do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yep.
Well, so I mean, public service, what we're doing here,
Mhm,
right?
mhm, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. And the encouraging thing too is once you can connect with, I mean, sometimes it just takes a simple one question
Mhm.
to begin unraveling a gigantic knot.
Yep.
It doesn't take that much necessarily, right? I think we're also conditioned to think that in order for us to get to a quote unquote healthier space, we have to do years and years and years and years of legwork to get somewhere. We can actually start experiencing improvement
Mhm,
immediately.
mhm,
I think that to me is the fun part.
mhm. Yeah, I think we should talk about that next time.
We should.
Hmm.
The ease of it.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, then next time that's what we'll
Yeah.
do. So in the meantime, thank you for listening to another episode of Breaking Up with RBS, the 60th episode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Feels good.
It does feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Feels good to get to those big numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, and we'll be back next week. And until then, I'm JDK Winnikin. Who are you?
I am Tawny Santabria.
That's what I thought. We'll
Mhm.
see you next week.
Yeah.
How you all feel tonight?
Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit